Good afternoon, and welcome to Q9's webinar titled Q9 Private Cloud, How to Have Scalability, Performance, and Control in 180 Days While Decreasing Operating Costs. My name is Peter Curd. I'm the Director of Marketing at Q9. This is the second in an ongoing series of webinars to keep our customers informed about various topics of relevance. Today's webinar will be recorded and we'll be making it available in the near future on our website. During the session today, if you have any questions, please click the Q&A button at the top of your screen and you can pose a question to us directly. We will address these questions during the Q&A period immediately following the presentation. Our goal will be to wrap up by 2:45 Eastern Standard Time. Now I'd like to introduce Nabil Sharif, who is Lead Product Manager on Q9's Cloud Services portfolio and our presenter this afternoon. Nabil, over to you.
Thanks, Peter, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As Peter mentioned, I'm a product manager here working and focusing on our cloud and virtualization portfolio in general, but across the entire suite. And today what I want to talk to you about is the private cloud services that we've been developing and rolling out over the past year that are now currently available and continuing to evolve and expand in our offering set over the near term. So today really what I wanted to do is get into a little bit of just cloud in general and the background and story of how we built our cloud and why we've made the decisions that we've done. Talk a little bit about what's good about Q9 Private Cloud. And then just give a quick little show and tell of the actual private cloud environment that we've developed for customers who choose to procure it. As I go through, if there are questions, please submit them into the chat channel, and we'll take a look at those questions as we get to the end of the session. So without further ado, I know we've only got a limited amount of time. What I really want to talk about today is sort of the history of how we got to where we've decided to go in terms of cloud. And when we started to take a look at cloud strategy and find another way to deliver IT in the way that our customers are demanding it, immediately we started to look at different cloud models. And the way that we got to our conclusion was, taking a look at public cloud, which is really the first place that people tend to learn about and find out about cloud as an operational model that might suit their organization. Public cloud, certainly people immediately look at Amazon, Azure, to some extent probably Google Compute Engine as well. And we all know, if you spend some time doing research in the public cloud space, what these players are good at. The public cloud hyperscale providers, as we tend to call them, are very good at what they do. I'm not going to take away from them in any sort of way. They are highly scalable, very fast to deploy, and they do have a relatively mature product set out there. But public cloud is really defined is really defined by the provider that's out there. Public cloud offers what public cloud offers, and if you want something that's slightly different than what your cloud provider offers, you're going to have to find a way to either adjust into what they offer, or you're going to have to find another way to implement those requirements. So as I've said here, you're really limited to the offerings and sizes the public cloud provider offers. What I think of particularly there is in terms of your virtual machines or your VMs, the size and configuration of those VMs in a public cloud provider tend to be based on standard sizes that they've defined. If you need something different from their standard small, medium, large t-shirt sizes of VM instances, that's something that you're going to have to figure out how to do on your own, or it may actually be impossible to do so depending on the provider. In public cloud, you're certainly still sitting on a multi-tenant infrastructure. And while multi-tenant infrastructure can be very well secured and very well engineered to conserve performance for individual users, you are still sitting on a multi-tenant infrastructure that does provide, or does introduce that level of risk and introduces what we sometimes refer to as the noisy neighbor problem. Definitely in public cloud, and this is important for a lot of Canadian players, data residency can be hard to control. And in public cloud, bandwidth is really kind of the real ratcheting factor that tends to become a greater concern as you start to grow out and mature into a cloud deployment. There's reasons that we see certain very large players in the new IT model moving away from hyperscale providers as their primary provider. One of the ones that people may have followed in the news over the past year, of course, is Dropbox. Dropbox, which certainly has massive scale in terms of the operations that they have in IT, has realized that they can achieve better results by moving away from Amazon, where they grew up and really started to develop. And now that they've got the economies of scale and the maturity that they need, private cloud is a better suit for them. Certainly network charges is definitely a major factor in that, and we can talk about that in the Q&A. As well, integrating a public cloud into your other environments can be tricky. Connectivity as well as access rules and interfaces with different types of architecture are things that need to be considered when you're working with a public cloud, because as I said, when you're on public cloud, what they offer is what you're able to consume. Any sort of gaps between your existing infrastructure that you need to integrate and the architecture there and the architecture that's in your public cloud are gaps that you're going to have to find a way to mediate through. So public cloud really is a great place for a lot of workloads and is a great place for a lot of IT type demands because it's highly scalable and fast to deploy. But the sacrifice that you make in public cloud is around control, to some extent around security and granularity, and definitely in terms of data residency and cost control. Depending on your usage profile, it can actually introduce some disadvantages. Private cloud is really the opposite of that. Private cloud gives you the opposite value proposition or the opposite trade-offs, where in private cloud, you do have full control of your hardware. You do have full control of your virtualization. You're not sitting with a noisy neighbor. You're not sitting on a multi-tenant platform. You've still got that ability to scale up and scale down. That's important in cloud. But you're not sitting on a toolkit that somebody else is providing you that you have to use as they've defined. You can carve up your virtual infrastructure the way that you want to. You can set rules and security and policy the way that you want to. More importantly, you can actually take a look at the underlying infrastructure and hardware and understand how that's running as well. So that can give you a good level of intelligence as well as proactive maintenance ability that might not be so easy to achieve in a public cloud. So control and granularity is something that you get in private cloud much better than you will in a public cloud. But the opposite trade-offs really apply in most private cloud deployments. Unlike the global hyperscale providers out there, when you're building a private cloud, you are doing all the same work that you would have to do in a traditional IT deployment. You've got to go through that procurement cycle. You've got to manage and rationalize whatever architecture you're building with whatever enterprise architecture you've already got established in your organization. It can take a while to get that procurement in and to do the engineering and configuration and professional services and optimization that you need to get that cloud to a place where it's really useful for you in production. And again, every time you want to add scale, because you're still buying the gear, you've got to go through that same process again. You also have to start planning for peak, which takes away from one of those advantages of cloud. Really what most people try to get out of cloud, or one of the things that people try to get out of cloud, is that ability to match their IT spend and effort to their actual consumption. In a private cloud, you've still got a provision for peak so that you can manage the capacity that's coming into your infrastructure. So private cloud gives you great control, but all of a sudden, scalability and planning becomes something that you really have to do a lot more proactively than you would in a truly elastic service like most public clouds. So this is something that we took a look at, and what we wanted to really do as we started to build out our Q9 private cloud is find a way to take all the pros of private cloud, that control and performance and that assured data residency, and do as much as we could to take away from what I think is the real disadvantage of private cloud or the real challenge with private cloud compared to public, which is giving that scalability, really sort of preserving the value and the characteristics of a utility model, but bring it to a private cloud type of performance and dedication. And that's really where our Q9 private cloud sort of plays into trying to deliver value to you that's unique in the marketplace. How have we done this? Well, we've really done this by taking a look at the technologies that we want to build this on and working with a next generation leader in cloud infrastructure solutions, and that's Nutanix. Unlike a lot of the traditional virtualization stacks that are out there, Nutanix is a hyper-converged architecture that allows linear scalability as well as a very high level of control and a very high level of telemetry on the underlying infrastructure that's going to be powering your cloud. As it says here on the slide, you can see Nutanix is actually recognized as a leader, and if you take a look at the charts on the Magic Quadrant, they are top right when it comes to cloud architecture and web scale architecture. They really have delivered a robust, forward-looking in terms of features and technology platform that's going to allow you to build a really high level of performance and scalability in conjunction with Q9 and is ready for the virtualization and cloud paradigms that we're seeing in the future, such as on-demand infrastructure, container support, etc. These are things that are built into our roadmap because we've chosen a new non-legacy virtualization platform on which to build our cloud. One of the things that's built into our cloud architecture here as well is a security-first design. So because this is built on a hyper-converged architecture that's built in a post-web scale era, security has been built in and has been a direct consideration of how the Nutanix infrastructure should work. From providing great analysis and telemetry on the actual underlying hardware and virtual workloads, to working well with a variety of different anti-malware or anti-intrusion technologies that can be applied onto this platform. We've got the flexibility and the power to make sure that whatever security requirements or compliance requirements you've got here, we are able to work with you to enable those on the dedicated private cloud platform that we've provisioned for you. Again, by choosing a new next-generation high-performance hyper-converged platform, we've also tried to eliminate some of the trickiness that can come from trying to move your workloads to either virtualization or cloud in general. Certain workloads that can be, let's say, tricky to virtualize, and I think things like VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure, things like databasing, or, you know, a really hot topic these days, of course, is data and analytics, or as some people like to call it, big data. Getting the type of performance in a virtualized environment, in a cloud environment, for those types of workloads can be, let's say, tricky to configure and manage. Due to the high performance nature of a hyper-converged solution, we believe that these workloads are much easier to apply and optimize on Q9 private cloud than they would be in most traditional virtualization stacks. And ultimately, of course, one of the things that really makes this private cloud special, aside from the technology that we built it on, is Q9 and what Q9 delivers into the wraparounds around this technology. So primarily, we place this in our high-performance data center environment. This is a data center environment that's maintained 100% uptime through the career of Q9 or through the existence of Q9 as a business. And it's something that allows us to provide that same level of high robustness and resiliency to the environment in which your cloud is actually going to be running. So from making sure that the hardware is always going to be powered, available, cool, and running, to making sure that the network runs at a very high level of performance. VPC sits on a 10 gig network fabric that can be extended to any other Q9 environment by a very easy cross-connect. We're able to provide a very high level of availability, performance, and reliability that is that we think gives a higher level of performance than you would see in almost any other cloud provider. So that's really our private cloud platform and what sort of makes it special. I'm looking forward to hearing comments and questions at the end of the session. But let's talk a little bit about why this is all important and what it really delivers to you, the customer or the user of a private cloud service with Q9. I love to put little puns into my slides here. So like I said, we're getting IT up and running. We're getting it up and running quickly. And that's the biggest thing that people are looking for in most cloud deployments. Like I said, cloud is about scalability and flexibility and on-demand usage of IT. So part of that is making sure that you can get up and running quickly. And the Q9 approach here is in less than 180 days. Honestly, it's usually a lot less than that depending on the requirements. You will be up and running with a new cloud environment that is ready for your production workloads. We really provide fast time to deployment with ongoing fast scalability, something that I think really makes us unique in the private cloud marketplace. And we do so while giving you a full private cloud that's under your control, but removing all of that engineering work that's required for you every time you need to scale, every time you need to implement, all of the troubleshooting and support of that tedious infrastructure and hardware that you just need to have there so that you can build a cloud. All of that goes away because it's supported under the terms of the service that we give you in dedicated private cloud. So as a company, you get to get away from doing the tedious work of managing infrastructure. And as a former network operator, I can tell you from experience, and I'm sure many of you who've been in that boat will agree with me, that's the kind of work that you never really get any glory for. It's only work that can get you into trouble. We're going to free you away from doing that work to doing work that actually was going to give you business value and recognition within your organization. Move away from doing the plumbing and actually start to do something nice with the house. Let's take a look at some comparative timelines, and I've put these up as sort of high-level numbers, but scalability is one of the really biggest things that gets us, scalability and automation are the things that really get us going quickly on a Q9 dedicated private cloud compared to procuring your own cloud. Building your own private cloud, like I said, is just like building traditional IT. So you're going to be selecting architecture and vendors. That's going to take a number of weeks. You'll have to go through a specification and pricing cycle, depending on how complicated your requirements are and how much back and forth there is with your vendor or vendors. That's also going to take a few weeks. And then you get into the PO and shipping cycle, which I'm sure all of you have been through, and we all know that it's a waiting period. After that, you've got the rack stack staging, and I'm not even talking about the optimization and configuration that may need to be done after rack and stack and staging. We're talking about a process that takes many weeks, if not months, to get you to full running speed. Compare that to a Q9 dedicated private cloud service where all of that work has already been done in the background for you. To procure or to expand a Q9 dedicated private cloud service, it's really as simple as filling out the order form, getting onboarded as a customer if you're not already an existing customer. And at that point, we're able to provision nodes into your dedicated private cloud cluster very quickly. As the timeline that I put here is 3 to 5 days, and that's really going to depend on what other services and what other paperwork needs to be done already for you as a customer, just to make sure that we've covered all of the terms of service. Realistically speaking, if you're a customer, and this is not a guarantee from me, so don't quote me on this outside of this webinar, I've seen nodes provisioned to a cluster or a cluster created in a matter of hours. So as long as we've done the due diligence together with you as our partner customer, we can get that cluster provisioned very, very quickly, much quicker than you would see in a traditional private infrastructure. The real magic is once we've actually added nodes to your existing cluster environment, you get to choose when you add that capacity to your infrastructure. And you do it with one click in the portal. I'll show that to you during the demo. That one click will add a node within 3 to 5 minutes, and honestly, I'm being conservative there. When we do the demo, it'll probably take even less time than that. So getting away from weeks and months of activities that you have to manage with vendors and partners in different departments in your organization, to filling out an order form and then clicking Grow My Cluster. I think you can see the value there. It can be really great depending on how quickly you need to get running. So really, what does Q9 Private Cloud really bring to you? Well, it brings you a few things. I'm going to talk about each of them. It's really scalability, performance and power, and control. The scalability and how do we do that, that's actually not something that you would build out of. If you went to any traditional private cloud or any private cloud vendor and started to build out your own infrastructure, you're still going to be stuck with a procurement cycle. You're still ordering hardware from someone that needs to ship it to you or your data center, and then you need to engineer it and integrate it into whatever you've already got. With a Q9 private cloud service that's built on our Elastic Infrastructure Service Platform, all of that work's already done. We already have inventory of nodes racked and stacked and ready to go. It's already set up with our Elastic Infrastructure Service Platform, so we can automate the powering on and integration of new hardware resources in our data center into your private cloud cluster or into your other environments as required. This is all automated. You don't have to go through a PO and wait for shipping. Because we're doing this, and because you can scale your cluster up and down as required, when you have high levels of seasonality or a large project coming up, add some nodes to your cluster. When you're done with them, remove them. We're getting back to that public cloud utility consumption matching model. That's one of the great values of cloud. You're getting private cloud performance and private cloud dedication while still matching your usage to the curve of your actual consumption, or matching your spend to the curve of your actual consumption. You get away from planning for peak. That's going to save you money and it's going to save you effort and time. And again, like I said, you get away from that procurement cycle of capital spend, waiting for shipment and planning downtime for upgrades. Capital spend, I think, is really an important thing here. One of the things about a private cloud service, rather than building your own private cloud, of course, is that you're paying a monthly fee for that service, rather than paying to build all of it up front. The opportunity cost of that money through the life cycle of a service contract or through the life cycle of the hardware that you've built means that you've got all that money to do other things with up front, rather than spending it up front to build out an infrastructure that may or may not deliver value to you later on. And ultimately, like it says here, you can add new capacity in days instead of weeks. From a power perspective, well, no matter what workload or use case Q9 can run, that's a bold statement to say. Obviously, we take a look at different types of workloads that we found are difficult to virtualize in traditional environments. And we've chosen a platform, and we've got the white papers and best practices behind us, both between us and our vendor, to show people how to run those difficult workloads in a dedicated private cloud environment provided by us. It's going to allow you to run faster and better in our private cloud than you could run in other cloud environments. Some examples of those use cases that people tend to think of in terms of tricky cloud or tricky virtualization is web scale architecture. We've got some great white paper information on that. VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure, or desktop as a service, if you're taking a look at that model, are things that can be very difficult to scale out in traditional architecture or in cloud architecture, simply because of the storage performance that may be needed. This is a place where private cloud powered by Nutanix really shines, because we can deliver sort of linear scalability on storage performance. And that really speaks very well to both VDI applications as well as SQL applications out there, database applications in general. Beyond that, everybody likes to talk about big data or data and analytics. And this is a high-performance, hyper-converged storage platform that's going to give you both the capacity and the velocity that you need to run those applications and really start to generate some business value and intelligence out of a large set of information. Beyond that scalability and that power, of course, is control. And this is one of the places where I really think our service shines. So as it says here, full control and management of resources through the top-rated cloud software suite. I'm going to show you the portal in a minute, because that really shows you the control of resources and the level of visibility that you've got. The great thing is you've got this rich, very cloud-mature tool set on a truly private infrastructure that you can control exactly how you want to. You're not stuck doing standard sizes that are provided by anybody else that doesn't understand your requirements. You're not sitting on an infrastructure that's being used by anybody else. There's no risk of over-reservation or over-subscription. You're not going to have a noisy neighbor. And because our network and our data centers sit entirely within Canadian territory, 100% Canadian data residency is something that you can actually achieve on our dedicated private cloud environment. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch away for a second here from the slide deck, and I'm going to show you actually our demo portal for our Q9 dedicated private cloud service. I know that we are coming up on time soon, so there's just a few sort of key things that I want to show you in this platform before we wrap up and start to take some questions. I think this is really where you'll see some of the value of the service that we put together. So let me just switch over to my web portal, and I'm hoping people can see that all right. Probably a little better now in full screen. And I'm just going to log back in. You may see your screen go blank for a second as I'm logging in, so apologies for that. People should be seeing the screen now again. Apologies for the brief pause there as I put in my super secret password. We've logged into the Nutanix Private Cloud cluster here. As you can see, this is a very basic version. This is the demo cluster that I use. In terms of look and feel and logo, it looks a little bit different when you get to an actual private cloud service from Q9. But from this portal, this is your one-stop location to get full control and usability of a private cloud environment that we provide you. I'm right here on the home page of our Prism portal. The interface is called Prism, P-R-I-S-M. And this is where you can just get an overall look at your dedicated cloud cluster and what's happening. I can take a look at the hypervisor and software versions that are running, and I can actually start to take a look at both the hardware that I've got, the storage volume that's available, the virtual workloads that have already been applied, and the hardware that's available to me in my cluster. This is actually where things get kind of interesting, and one of the first things that I wanted to show you. I talked a lot about the expandability or the easy scalability of our dedicated private cloud platform. I'm going to bring you into our hardware view in the portal and show you exactly how easy it is to add capacity to our cluster. So in the hardware view, you can see there are a variety of different views that you can take. I'm on the overview page, which is where you land in any new view when you're looking through the portal. This gives you sort of a high-level summary of what's going on in the cluster. You can see right here I've got 3 hosts or nodes that are part of my cluster in one block. And those hosts provide me 12 hard disks and 6 SSDs, as well as about 140 gigahertz of CPU and 3/4 of a terabyte of memory aggregated across the cluster. The interesting thing here is that one discovered that I wanted to point out to you here. This is an example of how we would add capacity to you as a dedicated private cloud customer. I'm going to show you on the diagram view because this probably helps a little bit. In the diagram view, you can actually see a logical diagram of the Q9 private cloud cluster that you've got. What we've got here is 3 nodes that are making up a private cloud cluster. 3 nodes is the minimum size for our cluster to make sure that we've got a proper data resiliency across the nodes for you as a private cloud user. In addition to each of these nodes where I can click on and drill down and take a look at the hardware and specific performance of that particular node or host, I've got the ability to take a look at the disks that are attached to each of those hosts and take a look at the performance characteristics, the smart statistics, the disk performance and alerts that come with each of those disks so I can get really good visibility and control into the underlying hardware elements that provide my cloud. The thing that I want to show you here is, like I said, this is a 3-node cluster right now. But I showed you on that previous page 1 discovered. Let's say you're a private cloud customer and you've got 3 nodes and you need some additional capacity. Once you've filled in an order form or submitted a ticket for that additional capacity, we would actually take a node from our Elastic Infrastructure Service and we would add it to your cluster network to make it visible to your cluster. At that point, we notify you that an additional node or additional capacity has been added to your cluster and that you can integrate that into your private cloud at will. This is something you can do when you're ready at your own time, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So at the top left, I've got a button here that says Expand Cluster. Sorry, top right. If I click on that Expand Cluster button, I'm going to add capacity to this cloud cluster. Now, because we as Q9 have already added that additional node that you've requested as a customer into your network space, it's already discoverable. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to say, let's add it to our cluster. I could change some of the configuration if I needed to, but because this is my cluster and I already know what I'm doing with it, I don't need to in this case. I'm just going to click Next. And then I'm going to expand my cluster. So you'll remember we were at about 12 hard disks, 6 SSDs, 140 gigahertz of CPU, and 3/4 of a terabyte of RAM. When I click on Expand Cluster, the Nutanix Private Cloud is going to start adding that additional node and integrating it into the aggregate capacity of the 3 nodes that I already have. I'm going to close this up because this is just going to happen in the background. And while we're going to wait a minute for that to happen, I'm going to quickly show you the VMs that we've built onto this cluster already. Again, this is a demo cluster, so there's a lot of little small VMs that are named after either myself or other engineers in the company. So nothing really critical working here at this moment, but I can get a good view of all of the VMs that are running, and I can actually take a good level of control both at the physical level but at the virtual level here in terms of taking a look at my virtual workloads. I've clicked on a specific VM here called DPC Demo VM, and if I scroll down into the analytics section here, I can actually start to control that VM. I could launch a console into it and actually view that virtual machine and see how it's running. This one's going to be just a boring little Windows machine, but you can see I'm already there. I can power off the machine, and I can take snapshots, migrate, or clone that VM to make sure that I've got the ability to move it around or to protect it as I need to. Snapshots take a second. You do a one-click snapshot. And then you've got a snapshot of the VM as it was running. That can be collected from the snapshots table and used to either clone or restore a VM that you need. I can also migrate a VM and move it from one host to another if I've got a specific requirement that a particular VM run on a particular piece of hardware. That's unusual in most cases, but that level of control is there for you. So I've got a full set of tools to control those VMs. I just wanted to show that quickly to you because I know we're running out of time while we were adding that cluster expansion. So we've probably been talking about 2 minutes since I hit that cluster expand button. Let's go back to the hardware table and see what's happening. I've got 4 hosts in a block now. And I've got 16 hard disks and 8 SSDs, giving me a total of, remember it was 140 before, now I've got 180 gigahertz of CPU, and I've actually got a full terabyte of memory compared to 3/4. If I was to move to the main home page, I can actually take a look at my storage volume, which is 20 terabytes of aggregate storage on this cluster. It's now gone to 28. That took about 2 minutes to add full functionality, full additional resources that are fully functional into our cluster. I think that really speaks to the power and simplicity of our Q9 dedicated private cloud platform. I'm just going to switch away again from the web demo quickly and bring us back to the slides that we were talking about, just to wrap up. So really, Q9 dedicated private cloud, what we built it for? We built it for customers who really need a truly private cloud with dedicated hardware, people who care about the VMs that they're running, that have important workloads and important orchestrations or sequences of events that need to be run in their IT environment. We give you the control to create and deploy those VMs the way that you need to, rather than shoehorning into some sort of public environment. You can buy the service by the node. So we're selling you sizable, bite-sized chunks of capacity that you can grow into as you need to. Start with 3 nodes minimum to give yourself full resiliency and redundancy. And as you need to add more, you can add in single increments or remove them in single increments down to a minimum of 3. Ultimately, you've got full control in a way that you wouldn't have in a public cloud or even in some other private cloud services. And of course, you've got access to our general resources in terms of instance sizes that we'll be adding in. These are roadmap items, as well as OS licenses that we'll be able to provide on the private cloud service in the future. In terms of the pricing, you can see that in the table there. We really tried to make this a competitive service, considering the high performance and high capacity that you can get out of a Q9 dedicated private cloud, especially compared to some traditional architectures. Ultimately, what this really should deliver you, and this is going to depend on your business profile and the values that are there. We as Q9 can work with you to try and deliver and define what the success targets are for your private cloud. You should be able to see great increase in business value, great increase in efficiency and power and effectiveness of your IT in general. by using a Q9 private cloud solution that gives you the advantages and scalability of a public cloud while still allowing you to retain that control that you need in a private cloud world because you care about your enterprise workloads. And that's really all I really wanted to say today. I want to thank all of you for joining. I'm glad to take your questions and comments at this time.
Good stuff. Thanks a lot, Nabil. Look, we're going to shift gears. If you want to ask a question, if you just click on the Q&A button at the top of your screen, that'll pose a question to Nabil, which we'll try to answer. And while we wait, we'll see if there's a few questions that have come in as we've been speaking on the slide. Do you have
Yes.
you got one there? Okay.
I've got one right here. So I've got a question coming up. I'm going to read this out and then I'll give the answer. So a lot of these cloud platforms can be purchased directly through the vendor. Why get it from a service provider like Q9? And that is a good question. As I said, I mean, I wasn't afraid to tell you guys the underlying technology on which we built at least part of our platform. And there's a lot more to it than that. And I think that's really kind of the answer to this question. The cloud technology vendor really only gives you a piece of what you need as a working system. There's always the wraparound services that are really important. And that's one of the things that's been baked into Dedicated Private Cloud. Dedicated Private Cloud is not just a high-performance Nutanix cluster hosted in a Q9 environment. It's sitting on our 10 gig network fabric and gives you cross-connectivity out of that 10 gig network fabric into any other environment you may have in Q9 or into a bandwidth service or connectivity point that you need to integrate with your other environments. On top of that, it's tied into a management network that's actively monitored by us at all times, as well as being wired and ready to access backup services and a backup network that we've made available to those customers so that you can ensure an even greater level of resiliency or start to enable a DR or a business continuity plan as you need to based on this infrastructure. The other thing that's really important about this is when you start to buy or build a traditional private cloud while working directly with a vendor and you want to build your own, well, we're back into that procurement problem that is one of the disadvantages of private cloud. You still have to go through a procurement cycle. You're going to have to go through professional services and integration and maintenance windows, not only when you're building your initial private cloud, but every time you decide to expand or contract to try and match to the utility model that you want out of cloud. All of that goes away by working with a service provider like Q9, because that gets handled in the back end. As I've said, what we do, and one of the things that we really provide, as well as world-class operations and a highly reliable environment in which your cloud can run safely, we provide that ability to get away from a procurement cycle. We've got an inventory. We've got an elastic infrastructure service that allows us to rapidly deploy that inventory into your environment as required. That's really, I think, the big thing that is a difference between building your own private cloud, where really once it's built, you're going to still have to run it. With a private cloud service, you get away from those lower level tasks that can be very time consuming, very costly, and very effort consuming. And you can focus on actually delivering IT value. Other question that I see coming up here, let me paraphrase this one. You mentioned a security first design. How does the platform you've selected help us achieve security and/or compliance? Certainly we understand that security and compliance is a key requirement for most of our Q9 customers. That's one of the things that we've always done well is provide security and reliability, and the industries and customers that have come to us as a result really speak to that. The reason we've chosen a Nutanix platform is because, and we've built a dedicated private cloud offering, is to help you enable any security requirements or any compliance requirements that you need to meet. What we've done is we've built a platform that helps, that enables and keeps from prohibiting compliance to those standards. Depending on what your requirements are, we will work with you to specify those requirements up front and make sure that we're designing a service, including the core service and the wraparound features that help you achieve those compliances.
I think that's it. Take questions. We haven't had any more questions come in. So we will we'll wrap things up now. I want to thank everybody for participating today. If you do have a follow-up question, because this was a lot of information very quickly, or you'd like to learn more about Q9 Private Cloud, please contact your account representative or email us at sales@q9.com. Thank you very much, and have a great day.